Let me ask you something, friends. What would you do if you were invited to your own son's house for Sunday dinner, sat at the family table, and your daughter-in-law, the woman you once welcomed like a daughter, looked you in the eye and called you a freeloader? And worse, your own son sat there right beside her, not saying a single word in your defense. Would you speak up? Would you slam your fists on the table and storm out? Or would you stay silent, smile politely, and then make a move so unexpected that everyone's face would turn pale? That, my friends, is exactly what happened to me. And today I'll tell you my story. The betrayal, the humiliation, and yes, the revenge that no one saw coming. Before I dive in, let me just say this. If you've ever been disrespected by your own family, if you've ever felt like the very people you sacrificed for turned their back on you, then you're going to want to stay with me until the end. And hey, if you think I did the right thing or the wrong thing, tell me in the comments. Was I the jerk or was I justified? Make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and, of course, subscribe for more real-life stories where senior citizens like me finally take back their dignity. Now, let's start at the beginning. I had been looking forward to Sunday dinner all week. At my age, 74, I don't ask for much. Just some family time. My son David promised me that Sunday dinners at his house would become our tradition. A time where 3 generations could sit together. Him, his wife Melissa, their 2 kids, and me. I thought it was a blessing. After my wife passed, I was lonely. My house was too quiet. So these dinners gave me something to look forward to. But lately, I noticed Melissa's tone with me. Short, cold. She would sigh when I asked for a glass of water. She rolled her eyes when I offered advice about the kids. And sometimes when she thought I couldn't hear, she'd whisper something to David and he'd just nod. Still, I told myself, don't overthink. She's stressed. Raising 2 kids isn't easy. That Sunday, I brought a homemade apple pie, my late wife's recipe. Took me 3 hours. As soon as I walked in, the kids ran to hug me. My heart melted. But Melissa, she barely looked up from her phone. We sat down, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and my pie at the center of the table. Everything seemed normal. Until halfway through the meal. Melissa put down her fork, stared right at me, and said in the coldest voice I've ever heard, "Frank, don't you think it's time you stop freeloading off us?" The table froze. David's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The kids looked confused, and me? My heart dropped into my stomach. "Freeloader?" I repeated softly, almost hoping I misheard. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and said louder, "Yes, you come here every Sunday. You eat our food. You sit on our couch, watch our TV. And let's be honest, Frank, you don't contribute a dime. This isn't a charity house." I looked at my son, my only son. The boy I raised, the boy I put through college by working, double shifts. I thought he would defend me, that he would at least say, "Melissa, that's out of line." But he just sat there, silent, avoiding my eyes. I cannot describe that pain to you. It felt like a knife in my chest. I wanted to shout, to tell her about the years I sacrificed, the money I spent, the love I gave. But something inside me told me to stay quiet. So I smiled, forced, bitter, and I said, "You're right. I shouldn't burden anyone." The table went awkwardly silent. Melissa smirked, thinking she had won. David cleared his throat and asked the kids about school, pretending nothing happened. But inside me, a fire was burning. They had no idea what I was about to do. I didn't touch another bite of food that night. Melissa thought she'd silenced me with her words, "Freeloader." But in reality, she had awakened something in me. I sat there, nodding politely, as though nothing was wrong. But inside, I was reliving every sacrifice I had ever made. When David was young, I worked double shifts at the steel plant. I skipped meals just so he could eat. I skipped vacations so he could go to summer camps. When he wanted to go to college, out of state, do you know who co-signed the loans? Me. When he married Melissa, do you know who wrote the check for their down payment? Me, a freeloader? I nearly choked at the insult, but I kept my mouth shut, because something told me silence would be my weapon. After dinner, Melissa cleared the plates with exaggerated sighs. She didn't touch the apple pie I brought. In a fact, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear. Store-bought would have been better. I looked at David one last time. He kept staring at his phone, pretending not to notice. That was my breaking point. I kissed my grandkids goodnight, ruffled their hair, and told them I loved them. Then I walked out the door, not saying a single word to Melissa or David. When I got home, I sat in my recliner staring at the empty living room. My wife's photo was on the mantel. She used to say, "Frank, never let anyone trample your dignity. Once it's gone, it never comes back." And I realized Melissa hadn't just insulted me. She had erased all the years I spent building that family and my son. By staying silent, he had let her do it. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Instead, I planned. You see, Melissa thought I was dependent, that I needed them, that without Sunday dinners, I had nothing. She thought I was just an old man desperate for scraps of family affection. What she didn't know was that everything they owned, from that house to the cars in their driveway, was tied, in one way or another, to me. I wasn't a freeloader. I was the foundation. And if they wanted to see me as a burden, I would show them what life looked like without me. The next morning, I made some calls. First call, the bank. You see, when David wanted that house, his credit wasn't strong enough on its own. I co-signed the mortgage, which meant, legally, I had leverage. Second call, the lawyer. I had been paying property taxes quietly, helping them out behind the scenes, and I had receipts, lots of them. Third call, my old buddy Hank, who worked at the local community center. "You still need volunteers?" I asked. He laughed. "Frank, we've been begging for help. Come by anytime." I had a plan now, a slow burn. The following Sunday, I didn't show up for dinner. At 5:30 sharp, my phone buzzed. "David." "Dad? Where are you? The kids are asking." "Oh," I said calmly. "I didn't want to freeload again. Figured you and Melissa could use some space." Silence, then a week. "Dad, you don't have to." But I cut him off. "Give them my love. Goodbye, son." And I hung up. That week, I poured my energy into the community center, helping seniors with meals, teaching the kids chess, even fixing broken chairs. For the first time in years, I felt useful again, needed, respected. Meanwhile, David called less. Melissa never called at all, and I didn't call them. Not once. But here's the thing about people who think they're better than you. They only notice your worth when it's gone. By the third Sunday, my phone rang again. This time, Melissa's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Frank," she said in a clipped tone. "The kids miss you. They're asking about you nonstop. Could you maybe stop by next week?" I smiled to myself. There was no apology in her voice, just inconvenience. She didn't miss me. She missed the babysitter, the handyman, the pie maker. I said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. And that's when the real revenge idea formed. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to argue. No, I was going to make her choke on her own words. The freeloader. The burden. I would make sure she understood exactly who had been holding the family up all these years. And when I was finished, she wouldn't just regret calling me a freeloader. She would wish she had never opened her mouth at all. The camera would fade on me sitting at my desk, pulling out an old folder of documents, loan agreements, tax receipts, checks I had written over the years. My proof. My arsenal. Because this wasn't going to be a shouting match. This was going to be quiet, precise, devastating, and I whispered to myself, "You thought I was freeloading? Wait until you see who's been carrying you." I knew one thing for certain. Melissa thrived on control. She wanted to be the queen of her house, the decision maker, the person who set the rules, and she thought I was too old, too tired, too desperate for family to push back. That was her first mistake. When you spend your life working double shifts, managing bills down to the penny, and raising a son on your own after losing your wife, you learn how to survive. You learn how to plan. And Melissa? She had no idea she'd just challenged the wrong old man. The first step of my setup was simple. Disappear. For 4 weeks straight, I skipped Sunday dinners. No excuses, no explanations beyond. I don't want to impose. At first, David called. Then his tone shifted from casual to concerned. The grandkids left me voicemails asking if I was mad at them. That hurt, but I knew it was necessary. Melissa? Radio silence. But I wasn't idle during those weeks. Oh no, I was preparing. I pulled out the thick folder I'd kept locked away in my cabinet. Years of bank records, receipts, copies of checks. Proof of the down payment I'd gifted them for their house. Proof of the car loan I'd helped David pay off when he got laid off. Proof of property taxes I'd quietly covered when they fell behind. And on top of that, the big one, the mortgage. I wasn't just a co-signer. I was a co-owner. Melissa thought I was just a freeloader. She had no idea her entire home still had my name on it. But I didn't want to use these weapons recklessly. I wasn't out to ruin my son. No. My target was Melissa's arrogance. I wanted her to see who I really was. So I reached out to David privately. Son, I said over the phone, I'd like to host dinner next week. At your place. Just like old times. I'll bring everything. You don't have to lift a finger. He hesitated. Dad, Melissa doesn't have to do a thing, I said firmly. This one's on me. After a pause, he agreed. Good. Step 1 complete. Step 2. I visited the community center. Hank helped me print copies of the documents in neat folders. Then I baked not 1, but 2 apple pies. My wife's recipe. Perfect golden crusts, cinnamon sugar on top. Because if this confrontation was going to happen, it was going to be wrapped in tradition. Sweet on the outside, devastating on the inside. That. Sunday I dressed sharp. Button-down shirt, polished shoes, my old watch that hadn't seen daylight in years. I wasn't going there as the tired, lonely widower. I was going as the man who built that family from the ground up. When I arrived, the kids hugged me so hard, I nearly lost my balance. Their joy gave me strength. Melissa? She raised an eyebrow. Well. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. I smiled politely. Good to see you too, Melissa. Don't worry. I won't be freeloading tonight. Everything's on me. Her smirk faltered just a little. We sat down. I laid out the food. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans. The same Sunday meal she usually made, except I made it better. The family dug in. Conversation flowed awkwardly at first, then warmed. The kids told me about school projects. David asked if I'd been keeping busy. Melissa mostly kept quiet, sipping wine. And then, when the table was half cleared, I set down the 2 apple pies. Before dessert, I said calmly. I'd like to say a few words. Melissa rolled her eyes. Here we go. But I ignored her. I looked directly at David, then at the kids. Do you know what your grandmother always said? I began softly. She said family means sacrifice, that we build each other up, no matter what. That's what I tried to do for your father, and for all of you. David shifted in his chair. Melissa tapped her nails against her glass impatiently. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Melissa, I said, turning my eyes to her. Last month you called me a freeloader. You said I come here, eat your food, sit on your couch, and contribute nothing. Do you remember? The color drained from her face, but she lifted her chin. I was being honest. I nodded. Honesty is important. So let's be honest. And then I laid the papers on the table. One by one. This, I said, sliding forward the copy of the down payment check, was the money I gave so you and David could buy this very house. Her eyes flickered. David looked stunned. This, I continued, placing the car loan receipt, was when David lost his job, and I paid off your car so you wouldn't lose it. Melissa's hand tightened on her glass. And these, I said, fanning out the tax receipts, were the property taxes I covered, quietly, without asking for thanks. Because family means sacrifice. Finally, I slid the mortgage document across the table, my name highlighted in bold. And this is proof that I am not a guest in this house. I am a co-owner. Silence. Utter silence. The kids stared, wide-eyed. David's jaw hung open. Melissa? She went pale as a sheet. I leaned back, folded my hands, and said, "So if anyone here has been freeloading, it isn't me." The room was so quiet. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. David finally spoke. "Dad, I didn't know you kept all this." "I didn't want to wave it in your face," I said. "I didn't want credit. All I ever wanted was respect, a seat at this table, not to be called a burden." Melissa opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. I slid the apple pies to the center of the table. "Now, shall we have dessert?" No one touched. Their forks. You could cut the tension at that table with a knife. The apple pies sat untouched in the center, like props in a silent play. Melissa's face had gone from pale to flushed. Her jaw tightened. She reached for her wine glass with a shaky hand, but even that betrayed her. The rim clinked against her teeth. David looked like a man who'd just realized the ground beneath him wasn't solid. His eyes darted between me, his wife, and the papers on the table. And the kids? They were staring at us like they'd just wandered into a soap opera. Finally, Melissa broke the silence. "This is ridiculous," she spat, her voice sharp but trembling. "Dragging up old checks and receipts like some courtroom drama? You can't just hold this over us forever." I leaned forward, calm, steady. "Melissa, I don't want to hold anything over you. I never have. I kept these papers to protect my son and my grandchildren, not to humiliate you. But when you called me a freeloader," I let the word hang in the air, heavy and sour. "You erased everything I've done, and worse, you did it in front of my family." David finally spoke, his voice low. "She's right about one thing, Dad. You shouldn't have had to prove yourself with papers. We should have known. I should have known." Melissa turned on him. "David, don't you dare take his side. This is our house, our family. He comes here, takes up space, and—" "Melissa!" David slammed his hand on the table so hard the glasses rattled. It startled even me. "That's my father. Do you understand that? He worked his whole life for me, for us. And you called him a freeloader?" The kids flinched at his raised voice. Melissa's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. For the first time, she didn't look in control. I could have basked in that moment. I could have let the anger wash over her. But that's not who I am, so I softened my tone and turned to my grandkids. "Listen, you two, I don't want you to ever think family is about keeping score. It's not about money or paperwork. It's about respect, about showing gratitude for the people who sacrificed for you. Do you understand?" They both nodded, wide-eyed. Then I turned back to David and Melissa. "I don't want to live here. I don't want your food or your couch. What I want is to be treated with dignity. If that's too much to ask, then maybe I don't belong at this table anymore." Melissa's eyes welled with tears, though whether from shame or anger I couldn't tell. She whispered almost defensively, "I didn't mean it like that." I shook my head. "You meant it exactly like that, and that's fine. At least now we're being honest with each other." David buried his face in his hands. He looked broken. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you that night. I failed you." I put a hand on his shoulder. "No, son, you failed yourself. And you failed your children. Because if they see you let someone disrespect me, what lesson does that teach them?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Melissa's tears finally spilled over. She pushed back from the table and muttered, "I need some air." She left the dining room without looking at me. David sat there, eyes red, staring at the papers. I decided to give him one last truth. "Son, when your mother was alive, she used to say something to me. She'd say, 'Frank, one day, the world will call you old. Don't let it make you small.'" I looked him dead in the eye. I've gotten old, David, but I will not be made small. Not by strangers, and certainly not by family. The kids finally spoke up, almost in unison. Grandpa, please don't stop coming. That cracked my heart right open. I pulled them both into a hug. I'll always be here for you, always. But maybe not in this house. Maybe it's time we start Sunday dinners somewhere else. My place. David swallowed hard, tears brimming. Dad, can we start over? I gave him a long look. That depends, son. Are you going to stay quiet next time someone disrespects your father? Or are you going to remember who raised you? He nodded slowly, like a man who'd just been handed a second chance but wasn't sure he deserved it. When Melissa finally returned, her eyes were puffy. She didn't speak. She just sat down staring at her plate. I stood, gathered my folder, and adjusted my jacket. I think I'll head home now, I said. Enjoy the pies. Or don't. As I walked to the door, Melissa whispered something. So soft I almost didn't catch it. I'm sorry. I paused. Turned slightly. You don't owe me an apology, Melissa. You owe it to your children. Show them how to respect the people who came before them. That's how you break the cycle. And with that, I left. That night, as I sat in my recliner, the silence in my house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. I realized I wasn't the freeloader. I never had been. If anything, I had been carrying them. And now, it was time for them to learn how to stand on their own. The house was quiet when I got home that night. Too quiet, some might say. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel lonely. I felt strong. I sat in my recliner, poured myself a small glass of bourbon, and replayed the night in my head. Melissa's pale face, David's broken silence, my grandkids' wide, tearful eyes. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was clarity. For 74 years, I'd lived my life for others. My wife, my son, my work. I gave and gave, rarely asking for much in return. Maybe that's why Melissa thought she could get away with it. She mistook kindness for weakness. But that night, I learned something important. Even the quietest man has a breaking point. The next morning, my phone rang. It was David. Dad, can we come over for dinner tonight? At your place? I hesitated. Melissa too? Yes, he said softly. She wants to talk. I almost said no, but then I thought of the kids. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about teaching them what respect looked like, and maybe, just maybe, teaching Melissa too. So I agreed. That evening, I set the table with my old dishes, the ones my wife and I had used for decades. I roasted a chicken, mashed some potatoes, baked fresh rolls. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to see my son, his wife, and the grandkids holding a bouquet of flowers. Melissa's eyes were red, like she'd been crying all afternoon. Dad, David said, we brought these for Mom's picture. That nearly undid me. I swallowed hard and stepped aside to let them in. Dinner was quiet at first. The kids chatted nervously, trying to lighten the mood. David kept glancing at Melissa, who finally put down her fork and looked me in the eye. Frank, she said, voice trembling, I need to apologize. What I said that night was cruel. I thought you were taking advantage of us. I didn't see what you'd done for this family, and I'm ashamed. I studied her face. For once, there was no smirk, no superiority. Just a woman stripped bare of her pride. I don't need your shame, Melissa, I said gently. What I need is honesty. Can you honestly respect me? Not as a guest in your home, but as the man who raised your husband and loves your children. She nodded, tears spilling. Yes, I can, and I will. For the first time, I believed her. David spoke next. Dad, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about respect. You're right. I failed you, but I promise you this. My kids are going to see me do better. No more silence. I looked at my grandkids, their eyes full of hope. That's all I ever wanted, I said, for you to learn the right lesson. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Melissa actually asked for a slice of my pie, and this time she meant it when she said, It's delicious. The kids snuggled beside me on the couch, asking me to tell stories about their dad when he was young. David sat on the armchair, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. And for the first time, the silence in that house wasn't awkward. It was peace. Now, let me be clear. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I won't pretend that night at their house didn't cut me deeply, but I also won't let it define the rest of my life. Here's what I've learned. Family respect isn't automatic, it's earned, and it has to be defended, even if you're 74 years old. Because if you don't stand up for yourself, no one will. A week later, my grandkids made me a drawing. It was of our Sunday dinner, with all of us sitting at the table together. Above it, they'd written, family, respect plus love. That's when I knew my late wife was right. Dignity, once lost, never returns. But if you fight for it, even in your old age, you can teach the next generation to protect it too. And now, friends, I turn to you. Am I the jerk? Was I wrong to sit quietly, gather my proof, and then reveal everything at that dinner table? Was I cruel to let Melissa's face turn pale in front of her own children? Or was I right to defend my dignity, to teach a lesson, to remind my family what respect really means? You decide. Tell me in the comments below. And if you've ever felt disrespected by family, if you've ever been made to feel small when you know you've given everything, I want you to remember my story. Don't let anyone write your legacy for you. Stand tall. Speak your truth. Even if it takes an apple pie and a folder full of receipts to do it. If you think I was justified, hit that like button. If you've ever had a family member disrespect you, share this video. Maybe they'll get the message. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories where seniors finally take back their dignity. Because at the end of the day, sometimes the quietest revenge is the loudest lesson.